attached to them. On the surface by the ear, you can see the parotid gland, and on the cutaway of the mandible, you can see the sublingual, submandibular, and of course the tongue. So make sure you take a look at those and make sure you see what enzymes are released from each of those glands. Now, as food travels down the esophagus, it makes its way into the stomach, which is coated with the mesentery that forms the serosa. So here you can see the serosa, and then here you can see it peeled away, exposing the muscles. Now, depending upon the direction of the muscles, you can determine what they are. The most superficial layer is the longitudinal muscle. It's going straight up and down along with the esophagus, and then as it begins to course over the stomach, it becomes the circular muscle, which is just beneath the longitudinal muscle. And then deep to the longitudinal muscle, to the circular muscle, is the oblique muscle. So 3 layers of muscle in order: longitudinal, circular, oblique. Okay? With the serosa on top. We have the lesser curvature. Lesser curvature, this is where the gastric arteries are. And we have the greater curvature where the gastric epiploic is. So the esophagus is the segue into the stomach by way of the lower esophageal sphincter. It's not very pronounced here, but if I ask you to identify the sphincter here, it's obviously the lower esophageal sphincter. That leads into the cardia, a region of the stomach, and then above the cardia is the fundus, that area that rises above the sphincter. So this is the fundus, the cardia, and this region is the body. All these ruffled areas represent the rugae of an empty stomach. At the distal portion of the stomach, where it becomes narrow, you have the pylorus. All of this is the pylorus, of which it has 2 parts: pyloric antrum, pyloric canal, where it narrows, leading to the pyloric sphincter here. The pyloric sphincter is the segue to, too fast?
No.
Oh, to the duodenum, which is the first portion of the small bowel. So here, you have the small intestine, which is framed by the large bowel. So starting up here is where the duodenum would be, the first 10 inches of the small intestine, and then we have the jejunum, and then the bluer region here is the ileum. The ileum is connected to the large bowel from here to here by way of the ileocecal valve. That leads into the cecum, the first pouch of the large intestine, and beneath that pouch is the appendix right here. And you have the ascending colon that bends at the hepatic flexure to become the transverse colon that bends again at the splenic flexure to become the descending colon, and then the sigmoid. You've heard of sigmoidoscopy? This is the sigmoid colon that they would be looking at. The rectum and anus obviously are not shown here. Now, from there we have the accessory structures of digestion, which include the liver. So here's the liver. This is the color of it, and it's non-cirrhotic look. You have the falciform ligament, the right lobe, left lobe, inferior vena cava. Posteriorly, you can see the round ligament here, and you can see the gallbladder. Now, the gallbladder, which is a sac that contains bile, which comes from the hepatocytes in the liver. The right lobe is drained by the right hepatic duct here, and the left lobe by the left hepatic duct here, slipping underneath the round ligament. Where the right hepatic and left hepatic meet, that forms the common hepatic duct, which is intersected again by the cystic duct here. This now becomes the common bile duct, which leads to here and joins up with the head of the pancreas and drains inside the small intestine by the hepatopancreatic ampulla here. So you have common bile duct here, you have a pancreatic duct here, and you have the hepatopancreatic ampulla here, this little raised papilla that everyone sticks their pen in, like that. These are plica circularis. Now, getting back to this, just again, gallbladder, cystic duct, right hepatic, left hepatic, common hepatic, cystic duct, common bile duct. The surface of the pancreas has these lobules on it, and inside here is where you'd have the cells that either make up the Steiner cells or the islets of Langerhans. This is the pancreatic duct, this is the principal pancreatic duct, and this is the accessory duct right here. Again, this is the duodenum, the hepatopancreatic ampulla, common bile duct, behind it. Now, inside the stomach, you have the mucosa, and the outside is the serosa. Stomach has 3 layers of muscle. In the small intestine, it also has a mucosa and a serosa. So when we look at this model of the small intestine, the outer portion is the serosa, and the inner portion is the mucosa. So from most peripheral to deepest, where you have the open lumen where digested foodstuff is passing, you have the mucosa. Beneath the mucosa is the submucosa. Beneath the submucosa is the muscularis, and beneath the muscularis is the serosa. Serosa, muscularis, submucosa, mucosa. Now let's look at structures in each of them. Beneath the serosa, you have the muscularis, which includes the longitudinal and circular. Since this is small intestine, it has 2 layers, where the stomach has 3: longitudinal, circular, and oblique. There's no oblique here in the submucosal area. In the submucosal area, you can see the lymphatic ducts here. You can see the neural network. You can see an artery, a vein, and a lymphatic nodule. This is the Peyer's patch. Also, you can see the Brunner's gland over here, which is going to produce mucus to allow for protection of the mucosal layer. Above that, you have the intestinal crypts, which produce digestive enzymes. But this red cell here represents a Penneth cell that produces antimicrobials, defensin, that protects against organisms, bacteria. For example, the intestinal crypt gives rise to the intestinal pit, which is here. These are the pits, and you can see on the surface these blue cells, which are the goblet cells, and the tan cells, which are the columnar epithelium. So you have columnar epithelium in tan, you have the goblet cells in blue, and the basement portion of the columnar epithelium is attached to the gray lamina propria. That's the connective tissue that supports the epithelium in place. Inside here we have the villi, and you can see the lacteal, which is where fats are absorbed. So this is part of the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system drains into the lymphatic ducts, which drain into the right and left subclavian veins, and that's why blood, after you eat, looks milky white, because the fats haven't been digested yet and disposed of by the liver. Also, you can see the anastomosis that forms between an arteriole and a venule right here. So we have highly oxygenated arteriole, and then we have the deoxygenated venule inside the villi. Again, you have a lacteal, the capillary. These are the columnar epithelium in tan, and the blue cells are the goblet cells. Regionally, you have mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, serosa. And I think that's it. Cut.